Today on CityCast Portland, Oregon lawmakers are heading into a short 5-week legislative session with a very long to-do list. At the top of it, how to keep the state's transportation system from falling apart. So today on CityCast Portland, I'm talking with Dirk Vanderhart, OPB state politics and government reporter. He's going to help us make sense of the options, the legal chaos, and what else lawmakers are trying to squeeze into this short session. It's Tuesday, January 27th. I'm Claudia Meza, and this is what Portland's talking about. Dirk, the last time you were here was years ago.
Oh.
Do you remember the last time you were here?
Yeah, I think we were talking the kicker. It was a lively conversation.
It was. I'm glad you remember that. Can you tell my hair grew?
I wasn't going to comment on people's looks, but it looks good.
Thank you. I just feel like we haven't seen each other in a while.
My hair did the opposite of grow. So.
Oh, really? I mean, you're hiding it in your, beanie. So I'm assuming it's still long and luscious.
Yep. Yeah, it is.
Okay, great. Full disclosure, Dirk and I worked together at OPB. I think last time you were on, I was ribbing you and I got a lot of notes. People were very upset I was ribbing you, Dirk. And so I just need to say this out loud.
I think you were ribbing my infant son at the time.
Perhaps. I don't remember. It was so long ago. So Dirk, the short legislative session is coming up next week. For those of us who don't follow policymaking as closely, how is this short session different from, let's say, the regular session and the special session we saw last year?
I mean, it's really a baby version of the regular session. So in 2010, there was a ballot measure that said, hey, let's create a 35-day session on even years. And that can be a thing, guys, where if we have budget emergencies, we'll just take care of the budget emergencies. It has not been that. It has just been a baby legislative session where lawmakers are limited to 2 bills apiece. People have bill limits because it's very short. It's 5 weeks. But still, people are cramming in all sorts of policies. The constant sort of refrain and complaint from Republicans about short sessions is, hey, this was supposed to be about budget emergencies, and Democrats are ramming all these policies down our throat. I think the last short session we saw, drug decriminalization was repealed, campaign finance laws were put into place, big policies can come through in these things, and sometimes with a little bit of notice. So very different from a special session like we saw last year, because those really are about here's something we got to do in between the times we're meeting regularly. In that case, that was all about transportation funding. But, this has a prescribed amount of time, 35 days, which, by the way, for me, perfect. I can deal with a 35-day session. A 6-month session is a slog and special hell unlike any other. 35 days, real fun. The
reason Dirk says this isn't because he hates democracy. It's because he literally has to drive all the way to Salem every day, be there. I don't know how early you have to leave Portland. I can imagine in a Pavlovian sense, you're just I hate legislative sessions.
It just takes its toll. Yeah, I'm not even down every day, but I'm down a lot of days and it takes its toll. It's tough.
Yeah, I can imagine that. So the biggest issue looming over state leaders right now, I think, is the same one they've been wrestling with for the last 2 sessions, which is state transportation funding. The legislature successfully passed a gas tax in September, and then Governor Kotek pushed to scrap that deal after a Republican-led campaign quickly collected enough signatures to send that tax hike to the November ballot. And there's a lot of speculation that she was just but I'm going to get voted in again in November, right? Right? So now this week, Democrats have backtracked on that plan to repeal, and there has been so much back and forth. We've talked about it a bit on the show already, but can you explain what's going on now and why this happened? I gave you my speculation point, but that's not, just so everyone know, that's a speculation. Governor Kotek did not come out and go, I can't have my beautiful name next to this repeal, Give us facts. Yeah. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, God, this has been such a long process at this point. All last year, we knew transportation was going to be the issue of the session, but it was really bungled, I think, by the Democratic leadership. They did not put out a bill. I'm sure your listeners know this by now, but let's just set the context. They didn't put out a bill in time. I think there was 3 weeks left in session by the time anyone saw their final bill. By that point, it was too late to cut deals. It failed. So, the state is looking at a situation where there's a huge funding hole for ODOT that's going to require a lot of layoffs. And the governor decides that is unacceptable. She calls lawmakers back into session. As you said, they pass a bill that includes a 6-cent gas tax increase. It includes like doubling registration fees, doubling this payroll tax for transit. Those things are very unpopular with Republicans, and it turns out probably pretty unpopular with a lot of voters because a couple Republican lawmakers go out and collect 250,000 signatures like that. I mean, like, I was talking to people ahead of this campaign. They're like, they're just using volunteers. They don't have money. How are they possibly going to fund a signature gathering campaign? They didn't have to. They just went out and crushed it. Like, they very, very quickly got enough signatures. And the message is unmistakable. Like, people are not interested in this tax right now. So they referred it to the November ballot. And just for some context, the last time a statewide gas tax was on the ballot was 2000. 87+% of people said, hell no, we don't want it. So this thing is like, I think everyone agrees it is going to fail miserably. The question has been, what happens? So you're right. Kotek first said, let's not have a vote. Okay, like, we hear you. We'll just repeal this thing, and then we won't have to have a vote. And it turns out no one really knows whether that's allowed. The state legislature's own attorney gave one opinion earlier this month that said, actually, yes, you can repeal that law and there won't be election. Then 12 days later, he completely reverses himself and says, actually, no, we've thought about it some more. You can't repeal the law and there has to be an election. Very strange. So this week, the Democratic leaders, the Speaker of the House and the Senate President said, okay, we finally got our legal advice. We cannot repeal this law and cancel the election. But what we are going to do is make sure it doesn't happen in November. We're going to make sure it happens during the May primary, or at least we would like to do that, and not November. And you're right. The speculation there is that this is a very political move because the governor is running for re-election in November. There are a lot of Democrats who voted for this unpopular tax that will be running against Republicans in November. And probably the Democrats aren't going to be too thrilled with having this tax that we think a lot of people hate alongside their name on the ballot, right? Maybe people are grumbling about that and then get to the candidate part of the ballot and say, you know what, like, let's send a message here. I think that's the worry.
Right. Well, so we had Speaker of the House, Julie Fahey, on, and literally the last thing I said to her as she was leaving, I was like, Julie, or I didn't say Julie, I said Fahey or something more respectable.
You called her Fahey?
I was like, Fahey. Like I was a coach and she was in my team. She was about to hit that sprint. I was like, Fahey. No, I was like, nobody wants new taxes. It was just like an aside. I was just like, promise me, it's never going to happen. I mean, anyone could have said that. Everyone knows this. But I just was like, no one has money right now. I know what the Democrats do, and it's always taxes. And I'm just like, I don't think that's going to be the solution. And it's so funny to see that they're like, yeah, so anyhow, a huge tax. And it just didn't go well.
Well, so this was like before they passed the transportation package? Like,
yeah, this was like her preview. And of course, in her preview was like the big thing was like, oh, this transportation piece that we very much need, And I was like, yeah, how are we going to fund that? And I was like, oh, I hope it's not taxes because that's not going to happen in this economy. Oh, good luck. Because usually it's Portland who has to pay for it. And I'm like, we're just swimming in taxes. Talk to Multnomah County about it first, and then we could get back to you. But anyhow, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, what could be next for funding transportation in our state? If you or a young reader you know are into fantasy and adventure, you might want to check out The Ascent by Vermont author Christopher Walker. The story centers around John Atwater, a retired Army veteran who finds himself lost in the mystical world of Morelia. And in order to return home, he must oust the oppressive ruler of this strange new land. The book has all the elements of a great fantasy novel, with thrilling action sequences, magical creatures, betrayals, romance, humor, and compelling, relatable characters. If any of this sounds intriguing to you, head over to ChristopherWalkerBooks.com and click on the Buy Now dropdown to purchase The Ascent in paperback, hardcover, or ebook formats. That's ChristopherWalkerBooks.com. So, whether the vote is in May or November, there may be no motion on new transportation legislation until 2027 now. So, what options do state leaders have to at least partially fund roads right now, fund any kind of personnel that might
Yeah.
be getting the boot? What's on the table and what's a non starter at this point?
Yeah, I mean this is a tricky thing because ODOT says right now that it still has a budget deficit because none of that new money came online, right? It's been blocked. And so I think the budget deficit is 242 million. And that likely is going to require layoffs, though we don't know how severe they are. I think there's like 500 open positions in ODOT right now. So like theoretically you could just not fill those, take them off the budget and get some savings or reduce the hole. But funding it is going to be really tricky because lawmakers can't touch the gas tax. Because there is this vote pending, they can't do anything on the gas tax. They can't do anything on registration fees. They can't do anything on this payroll tax that funds public transit. It's just untouchable until a vote is held. What they have said they are going to do is just look around at the existing money and basically pull it from other areas and try to get the gap as small as they can. So we don't know what it's going to involve. Like, is it going to pull money from these big projects that have some funding for them, like the Rose Quarter project in Portland or the Columbia River Crossing Interstate Bridge Replacement Project? You know, those have money allocated for these long-term projects. Are they just going to pull money back from that? Maybe are they going to forego raises for some people or whatever? They're just going to look at the totality of transportation funding and decide what is going to be deprioritized in the name of funding maintenance and trying to limit layoffs. That is the sense we are getting.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Republicans will say they have been urging Democrats to do this all along. And it's true. Like since last year during the session, they said, do not raise taxes. You need to cut in other areas. We have enough money. We're just not spending it right now. The Republican priorities are not what the Democrats are going to agree to, because a huge part of the Republican priority is axing all state funding for public transit, right? Gutting
Oh,
this big resource for public transit, and
yeah.
thereby, I think that would be cataclysmic for services, and Democrats wouldn't be willing to go there. And you know, you mentioned what is a non-starter. Governor Kotek has said, as we look to close this budget gap, I am not going to pull the public transit funding. So we do not believe that will be touched. But we truly don't know what will be. I mean, it is going to be a fascinating conversation, you know, where they try to pull the money from.
Right. And it's so interesting the Republicans don't really care about public funding because their constituents in East Oregon desperately need public transportation, as I learned from reading and listening to OPBs. I think it was called Last or the Bus Stop. What is
Stop requested.
Stop Requested? Shout out. That was such an amazing series. And it was the first time that I actually, listened to actual people living in East Oregon and hearing their issues and just feeling so terrible for understanding why they want to go to Idaho, understanding why they're just like, screw Oregon. And I get it now. I'm like, oh yeah, none of their needs are being met.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, the Republicans would say to that, it is a small portion of people that rely on public transit, that the state funding that they are looking at eliminating is relatively new. I didn't think it existed before 2017.
Mm-hmm.
And so we could just go back to the old ways. I mean, it's a non-starter, and it's one reason why their proposal went nowhere in the legislative session, because
Mm-hmm.
Dems are just clearly not going to defund public transit. Even with the existing funding, we are looking at public transit cuts in Portland and a lot of other places. And so, yeah, I just don't see that happening. But let me just say this. If we do pull money from, like, for instance, projects, that creates a whole cascading other series of problems. Let's assume these are projects that are needed. Maybe they aren't all needed. But if you delay projects, they just get exponentially more expensive over time. We know that from transportation project history.
Right.
And you may lose federal matching funds. Like, there are no easy choices in this.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you see the legislature coming up with any kind of new transportation bill that could be passed in the next 5 weeks in this supposed short session?
I don't see a transportation funding bill. I mean, we are not getting any sense there's anything coming there. And that's partly because they have tried to tap all the mechanisms they get transportation money from, and those were referred. And so they are untouchable until a vote.
Right.
I just think that they're going to do the cutting and the reprioritizing and wait for 2027 to try to take another bite at the apple.
Right. Or they could do the thing I've been pushing every government to do, which is to sell merch.
Yeah, if it's good merch. Not all merch is created equal.
I mean, of course, Dirk, it's going to be awesome merch. All right. Well, let's take a quick break here. And when we come back, a couple more policies on the table this session that we're keeping an eye on. Well, aside from transportation, there are a handful of other big policies on the table in this short session that I wanted to discuss briefly. One of the biggest agenda items is several bills pushing back on the Trump administration's immigration efforts. What's going on there? Like, what are these bills? What are they covering?
Yeah, this is the type of thing where it is sometimes hard to distinguish between something that is actually going to be a real policy that helps things and something that is political messaging. And I will just say, I don't know. I don't know where this stands. One of the bills is going to, I think, look to curtail the use of masks in policing. So like ICE agents who are coming around with their faces covered and no identification. And that can be very menacing, but also doesn't have much accountability with it when people might be abusing their authority. That is one target of the lawmakers here. I have not seen the bill. There's another one that would look to not allow state money or state contracts to go to companies if they're helping facilitate immigration enforcement. That's one that I think could get interesting, but also might have some sticky problems with it, and we just don't know, how it's going to look. And again, like, this is the type of thing that legislatures across the country, Democratic legislatures, are doing, right? Because there are only so many mechanisms that you can use to sort of combat things people find as objectionable.
And the federal government, honestly, like, there's only so many things that our state rights will allow.
Yeah, and probably a lot of these are untested and could be subject to lawsuits. I just, I don't know a ton about it, but I don't get the sense that there are any surefire, like, this will fix it. There are people throwing spaghetti at the wall saying, we feel we have to do something. We feel there is overreach occurring, and let's just pursue and have some of these policy discussions.
Right. I personally find the mask one to be less performative, and I do see the reasoning. And a lot of it is because, when all this shakes out, we're going to want their identities. To me, this really does help.
No, I agree. Performative can mean a lot of things. Like maybe it would be great, but is it workable? Right? Like, sure, we can say we can block agents from doing it, but
oh, gotcha. Like, but are they going to do it?
Yeah, I mean, is there any actual authority that would allow us to do that? And would the Trump administration have to listen? Like, it is just not clear to me that is the case. You know what I mean?
I'm hearing you now, Dirk, and you're like, and so what's the point of going through all the legal hoops, wasting our precious short session days on policy that we can't even enforce? That's what you're saying, and I totally get. And why am I driving? It's 7 a.m. Why am I going to Salem? Is that what you're saying? I hear.
No, but yes. And just hear me out. I don't know where this falls. Maybe it's the most like legit policy on earth. It's just a question I have. I found the other bill I was thinking of, and it would require school districts to have very clear policies on what to do if immigration shows up there, because we have seen, we have seen immigration agents outside of schools. And so, maybe make sure that schools know what the protocol is.
Drop and roll.
Duck and cover.
There we go. It's the duck and cover. Just bring it back. There's also an effort to patch a $900 million loss in revenue that the state is anticipating from, don't make me say this, Trump's big, beautiful bill. And lawmakers are hoping to do that by just breaking with federal tax code. What does that even mean?
So this is super complex.
Can we do that? Is that legal? Like, how does a state break from federal tax code?
So there's a lot here. So let's start with that. The big, beautiful bill, HR 1, if you want, just call it HR 1 if it makes you uncomfortable. But it included a bunch of tax breaks, right? And those were included in the federal tax code. So our, people's federal tax bills were reduced if they were applicable. But the way Oregon calculates its state taxes is very reliant on the federal tax code. So in other words, if you and I are calculating what we owe the state every year, a lot of the boxes we are checking are linked up to the federal tax code. So our taxable income on the state level is reliant on all these pieces of the federal tax code because we are synced up with it. And because of that, when the people's federal taxes are reduced, also alongside it, their state taxes are reduced because of these tax cuts. And so that has created a situation where $900 million or so of money that otherwise would be coming into the state's general fund is not, right? And the question is...
Gotcha. Yeah. I see what you're saying.
And so the question is whether the state disconnects from all or some of those new tax cuts in H.R. 1. The problem is, I mean, you voiced it earlier, like, people don't want taxes right now. And these are actually not new taxes, but a vote to disconnect is functionally raising people's taxes because at the status quo, they would be seeing a tax cut, right? They would be seeing some of the tax cuts from the federal government roll to their state taxes. If we disconnect from that, those go away. And so you are functionally raising people's taxes.
Well, you're just keeping them the same, I would say, right?
You're keeping them the same technically, but you are going against the status quo. So right now, you and I don't know how many of these apply to us, but you and I can probably expect some measure of lower tax from this. Maybe not, but some people can at any rate because of the status quo. So they are going against the status quo that would allow those tax reductions and just bringing some of the money back to the general fund. We don't know what Democrats' proposal is going to look like on this. I think it's very unlikely they disconnect all those because like taxes on overtime being exempt, tips, taxes, like those are popular things that have made their way now into Oregon's tax code that I doubt they're going to be willing to go against. But they may go for some of it. We just haven't seen their proposal yet. But that's just one piece of the budgetary puzzle that we will be trying to solve this year, because another part of H.R. 1 did all sorts of things to SNAP benefits and Medicaid. And a couple of things they did just ensured that Oregon needs to check a lot more closely whether people qualify, right? A lot more frequently, we will be looking to see whether people enrolled in these programs are allowed to be in these programs. And that is going to cause a huge cost increase. Like, we just need to hire a bunch of people to do those things. And we are hearing that is like in the order of hundreds of millions of dollars that would be needed just to hire that many people. And so there's just a lot of kind of budgetary chaos going around this session. And that is only going to be vastly increased next year when the legislature is creating a new 2-year budget, because then the impacts of H.R. 1 get even more pronounced.
Right. I mean, you didn't ask me, Dirk, but I do hope this break with federal tax code does go through.
Interesting. That runs very contrary to your conversation with Fahey.
I know, but I know that our state needs funding, clearly. If it goes directly to the state, I can see it actually going to state funding. That'll make me feel better about paying taxes.
Yes, if they vote to disconnect, it's not going to raise anyone's taxes higher than they have been. It's just not going to reduce their state taxes in ways that might otherwise exist.
And I feel like the state needs money. I would rather my money go locally than federally right now, because I don't care to procure Greenland. By the way, thank you for breaking all this down. I appreciate it. One thing I wanted to tell you, Dirk, is that when we work together, I always thought of you as like a little bit of a curmudgeon about politics, about our process in general. Like, I'm like, man, he hates everything. Like, you strongly are just like, oh, the Democrats, oh, the Republicans. The frustration was very clear. And I was always just like, Dirk, like, what's going on, man? Like, they're just trying to fight for, you know what I'm saying? I was very idealistic in my defense sometimes. And now, 3 years in of covering local politics, I need you to know, Dirk, that I too hate every party. And so, thank you.
It's just, you can't, I mean, I wouldn't use the word hate.
No,
you can't look closely at our political system and processes and, probably on any level and not come away jaundiced and just like a little bit disappointed. Not always. Sometimes there are moments of hope and there's always interesting stuff, but it's just, you kind of, after a while, you're just like, Jesus.
You know what it is? It's not hate. It's, your home team that you're like, God damn it, you guys get it together. It's like that. I feel like a Dallas Cowboys fan. I don't watch football.
I can tell.
But I know about the legacy of the Dallas Cowboys, which is that everyone has that look when you come back from Salem.
Yeah.
And I get it. So
tears streaking down my face.
They did it again, you guys. They did it again. Nothing. Well, thank you so much, Dirk, and maybe we'll talk again next time that this happens. I don't know. It might be a special session right after the short session. Who knows?
It's always my pleasure. I love to see you and great chatting with you.
that's all for today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, share it with a friend or rate and leave us a good review. It really helps us out. And don't forget, you can support this show and get some great perks by becoming a CityCast neighbor. Just visit membership.citycast.fm for all the details. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's.